So as we discussed yesterday, Republican Senator Greg Ball has sparked some controversy with his plan to hold a hearing on Friday on the state's public protection preparedness in the post-9/11 era. Senate Democrats and their allies accused him of bigotry after he invited witnesses to testify about Islamic law, invoking comparisons to a hearing on the radicalization of American Muslims that was held by Congressman Pete King in Washington last month. Now the Council on American-Islamic Relations is planning to protest Ball's hearing, but he remains steadfast in defending the event, accusing his opponents of playing politics. The senator is joining me now in the studio. Senator, it's great to see you.
Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's in particular since we have not actually managed to talk to you since you were running, so this is your first time.
I was evading.
Well, you were evading. I did not say that, but welcome. Welcome to Capitol Tonight.
Pleasure
Thanks for being here. So I just want to get started. First, I mean, look, there was a lot of back and forth yesterday between yourself and Senator Parker, who represents a large constituency of Muslim Americans in his district. How is this, in your mind, different from what Pete King did last month in Washington?
Well, you know, a couple of things. First, with Senator Parker and the others who signed the letter, we've bumped into each other at least a dozen times. And I have bent over backwards with this hearing to ask for input from rank-and-file members to see who would you like to have testify at this hearing.
Right.
And never in those interactions did Senator Parker or any of the other senators who are now expressing concerns ever have any suggestions or any expressed concerns. Now they're doing it. You know, we should not be playing politics with Homeland Security. I understand that we live in the world of Albany that common sense forgot, and sometimes it's more about getting a front-page news story instead of preventing a front-page news story like we saw the day after 9/11. And that's unfortunate because I would love to have the other side represented in this hearing. And to this very moment, I offer those who are protesting the hearing to give me names. We will have them come to the hearing, and let's have an open and honest discussion in this great democracy.
Well, part of what Congressman King, who is actually testifying, he's the first on your witness list, and he said quite definitively he thinks this is a great idea, and he's happy to be there. So we expect to hear from him at the hearing. However, you know, part of what he did was he invited Keith Ellison, who is a Muslim congressman, to come and testify in a way to sort of inoculate himself against this idea that he was in some way targeting Muslims, which the New York, you know, which NICLU says that you are doing, and some other good government groups and civil
you know,
liberties
we have, I
groups.
think, nearly 20 people who are on our list that are testifying.
Right.
We have officials coming from Entergy, Indian Point, because of the recent disaster that we saw in Japan, to talk about nuclear preparedness. We are going to be talking about electromagnetic pulse devices. We're going to be talking about radio interoperability, the fact that nearly 10 years after 9/11, we have communications and agencies that still cannot communicate with each other. A huge issue. And one person, Noni, is going to speak directly about the culture of jihad and about her a little. I mean, she lived for over 30 years in Egypt. Her father was part of the Fedayeen operations, the Egyptian intelligence to destroy Israel. He was a martyr. He died in the pursuit of that goal to destroy Israel. She was raised in Gaza schools that raised her to hate Jews, that raised her to hate Israel, to hate Americans, all non-Muslims. And I think it's extremely important that in New York State and politics that we don't allow the years that have passed since 9/11 to cloud us, and that we don't allow the opiate of political correctness to move us away from an honest discussion. And I offer again to Senator Parker and the others that have questions with this hearing, come to the hearing, become a part, and let's do everything we can to secure New York City and the state.
Right. I mean, she has said things like, quote, cruel, she said Islam is cruel, anti-women, anti-religious, anti-personal freedom in general. I mean, there are people who are Muslim who think that her statements are controversial. But leaving aside whether or not she is controversial.
And she's former Muslim. And
Right. Why did you not, for example, invite, if Senator Parker said to you, did not respond to your requests to provide you with lists of people who might he would like to see there, why did you not then subsequently broaden out and look for someone yourself, like a Keith Ellison type of a person?
I can tell you that right now we are doing that, and I think that we will hopefully have representation on Friday. But I will tell you this. I reached out to rank-and-file members and asked for their input. The people who are testifying at this hearing, I invited personally, and as chairman of the Senate Homeland Security Committee, I want to be able to get inside the head, logical, illogical as it may be, to understand why do our enemies want to destroy us. And from a first-hand account, from a very young age, to have the testimony from Noni about how at a very young age children are taught the culture of victimization and a culture of hate, to hate Israel, to hate the United States of America, that we're not Kansas. we're New York City and New York State, and this is terrorist target number
Okay,
one. And these
but-
people who are taught to hate are going to be focused on that terrorist target.
Okay, but Senator, with all due respect, I mean,
Sure.
how is that going to help you make New York any safer? I understand as a senator, you have a responsibility, and chair of the Homeland Security
Yep.
and Veterans Affairs. This committee is actually quite broad in its scope. You have a responsibility to try and figure out how to keep New York safe.
Yeah.
You pass legislation to do that. So Indian Point makes a lot of sense. Sure, I get it, because it's right there. It's actually right there down near your district, if not in your district. Okay,
Yep.
and I get talking to Peter King. He's a congressman who also has the commensurate job that you have in D.C. I get talking to Ray Kelly from New York City Police Department. But what Sharia law? What does that have to do with your ability to keep New Yorkers safe?
Well, I'll tell you this. You talk about Indian Point, yet Indian Point has not caused the death of 3,000 Americans and New Yorkers, whereas the culture of jihad has. 19 men with box cutters changed our global history. When we remember those images of men and women who were literally jumping out of a high-story building to their death because they didn't want to be burned alive, that is our responsibility. As chairman of the Homeland Security Committee here in New York State for the Senate, I take it extremely seriously. And I want to understand, whether it be electromagnetic pulse, whether it be a single bomber, I want to understand the mentality of why they seek to destroy
But
us
then
and what we're
could
up
you
against.
then do about it? In other words, I asked the same question of Pete King prior to his hearing. You have a hearing that causes a lot of fire, that makes headlines, arguably, and then you take this information and do what with
Well,
it?
I'll tell you what, we have gotten letters and memos from union reps, from rank-and-file security guards, from businessmen in New York City that have sent me letters that have made my hair stand up on the back of my neck. And we're going to seek not to exploit it through the press, but we are going to seek to show where we do have a soft underbelly. We're going to talk with law enforcement first and the proper officials first, and we're going to do everything we can. We have transportation corridors right now in New York City and connecting to New York City that are not secure to the point they should be. All of Manhattan doesn't have the security that southern Manhattan does. Our first-line responders cannot communicate in the way that they necessarily should be able to. And there are certain people that are being kept out of training exercises altogether because of turf battles. We have got to have a very serious discussion about that, and some of this has gotten caught up in, well, you know, the economy is number one, it's all about taking $1 and turning it into $2, and the entire concept of really making sure that we're secure has fallen to the wayside.
But do you imagine that there will be legislation that you will propose as a result of this hearing?
Not only will there be legislation that I propose as a result of this hearing at the state level, but I will also fight as the chair of this committee, and I would love to work across the aisle to do so, to make sure that New York State gets our fair share and beyond of federal dollars. The reality is that the Federal Department of Homeland Security has become a cash purveyor of grants for states like Kansas and North Dakota and everywhere in between. We have a soft underbelly, whether it be Washington, D.C., New York City, and it's increasingly likely that a small group of well-financed people who are trained in that culture of jihad, to hate Israel, to hate the United States of America, that well-financed and well-organized, they will bring inordinate destruction not only to New York City, but the United States of America. And we, New York State, is not getting our fair share. And as Senate chair of the committee, it's my responsibility to bring attention to that very fact.
Are you not concerned that when you invite a guy like Frank Gaffney, who's not going to show up, but he's a pretty conservative guy, he's questioned whether or not President Obama is in fact American, he has questioned whether he's still a Muslim, for example.
Which, you know, if from that's an entirely other topic. He also is academically credentialed and is seen as a terrorism expert from all within the community.
Yeah, I understand
There's some rhetoric that is unnecessary, and I would not embrace in any way.
I see. So but you're not concerned then that you could be wrongly perhaps construed to be embracing that kind of ideology?
I have been nothing but attacked my entire political career. I have skin as thick as the state of Texas.
The man is made out of hide, ladies and gentlemen. He is fine. Throw your verbal barbs at will. Before, I just want to let this go for 1 second,
Sure.
because I do want to talk to you briefly about ethics. You're now carrying this bill. You actually inherited it. It would actually bar elected officials
Right, yep.
who are found guilty of a felony
Right.
from receiving their pensions,
Right.
which I think a lot of people actually think is a great idea.
Common sense, right.
But it also would apply to other people,
Right.
right? Who are anyone who is in
Any public official.
right? Which is not something necessarily that you
Well,
support.
I mean, look, at the end of the day, I think we have to have an open debate about it. We also, I believe that this particular piece of legislation, and for people who don't know, my senator has had his own problems, including being investigated and indicted by the FBI. So it's really a pertinent issue to my district, where I had people coming up who've worked their entire life for a $30,000 a year pension. They're like, is he really going to get a pension? And you have to say, yeah.
Well, you're talking about Vinnie Leibel, of
Right.
course, right?
So it would include all public officials, but I think that this particular piece of legislation will make its way into the overall ethics package that hopefully will pass this year.
So have there been discussions about that this ethics package, this storied ethics package
Yeah.
that we keep hearing about, that might actually include
They're
that?
very serious discussions, and I know amongst my conference, it's a top priority. I know with the governor's office it's a top priority, and I think that we will get a really strong ethics package this year.
Okay, well, unfortunately, we're out of time. Senator, I want to thank you very
Excellent.
much for
Thank
making
you.
your Capital Tonight debut. We
Thank
will
you.
be following your hearing and following you. Thanks a lot.
I won't evade anymore.
Okay, no more evading.
Okay.
After we